Happy Friday, everybody. It's Dr. Bridget Young from babyformulaexpert.com. It's hardly happy hour. It's way past my bedtime. We're finally going to talk about European formula brands. This is literally take 3. This is why I don't actually do it later. I turn into a pumpkin at 8:30. So, but the boys were just wild, and our precious niece is staying with us, and so the poor thing, she's learning all about boys, and they just play differently than girls. And I tried twice. Fun almost drank some of my beer, and I was like, I can't. I'm gonna have to step away and come back and do this after everyone is in bed and no one's gotten out of bed. And so here we are. Here's the breakdown I'm gonna go through with you. So last week I saved my drink because I started it and realized it was a bad time to be drinking until the children were in bed. So now I'm going to indulge a little bit. Last week I talked about differences in formula regulations between the European Commission, who does European formula, and the FDA, who obviously does American formula. If you have not watched that, and if you don't know all about that already, I really, really encourage you to watch it or go over to the website babyformulaexpert.com /European-formula, because I think it's really important to have a really good context for the decision between American versus European formulas before you start getting into the nitty-gritty of which particular type of European formula. So if you have already done that, you're in the perfect spot. I'm going to go over the 3 major European brands of formula, which are HiPP, Holle, and Lebenswert. And I'm going to break down basically the options you have in each and just do a comparison. People ask me all the time, which is my favorite, and I'm so lame. I don't ever give an answer, just like with US formulas, because every baby is different. So every baby is going to have different tendencies to digest certain ingredients better than others. So it's nice to have options. So there's no such thing as a universal recommendation. So with that being said, let's jump in. I'm going to try to keep this low fluff because if I look at myself, I can see that I'm a hot mess and it's time for me to go to bed. Okay, we are going to start with HiPP because it is the most complicated because there are so many options. So HiPP, like all European formulas, comes in stages. Stage 1 and stage 2 are for the infant period from 0 to 12 months. Stage 3 and 4 are beyond, so I'm not covering those. The staging, I'm not going to get into this because I got into it last week, but the staging in Europe is really important, unlike staging in the US, which is mostly marketing. So it's really important that you understand the differences between stage 1 and stage 2, which I talked all about last week. The biggest one for the micronutrients is probably iron, but there are lots of other subtle differences between some vitamins and minerals, which I'm not going to be covering today besides iron. I'm really going to focus on if the protein, carbohydrate, or fat sources change, because those are really big shifts in your baby's diet from 1 to 2. If you're making that transition. So let's just jump right in. So HiPP has not only different stages, but also different countries. So HiPP manufactures formula in 3 different countries in the EU, the UK, the Netherlands, and Germany. And unfortunately, there are subtle differences between them, mostly between the UK and the German versus the Dutch. This is unfortunate because they're often just marketed as HiPP 1, and why I think it's really important that if you order European formula from a US supplier, you work with a supplier who is very consistent about the country of origin, because once you get on a formula you like, I don't want you switching countries like willy-nilly because there could be subtle changes in ingredients. So let's jump in. I'll start with HiPP 1 and kind of just go through if there are differences between countries. So I'll hit the 3 major macronutrients, which are protein, fat, and carbohydrate. And then, so I'll do this for all formulas, go over if there's any extras included, if there are superfluous ingredients, so things that aren't required but are added. And then the other big things to note with European formulas are if they contain DHA and what is the source, and then the iron content, because like I said, that'll really differ between stages and extremely differ from US competitors. So HiPP stage 1, protein first. Okay, so the protein is easy because the protein source is the same in all countries, all stages. So we can just hit it once and move on. So for all HiPP formulas, the protein source is organic, skim milk with additional whey. So they're all intact protein formulas. So the undigested full-size protein with extra whey added. So that's the same as standard US formulas, except of course all European formulas are organic. They have to be, and they are not only organic, but they have to have 0 detectable pesticide residue, which is kind of like I call organic plus. When I was writing the blog, I wrote it's like organic on steroids, and then thought that was kind of a contradiction. So it's like super organic, more strict regulation to organic than we do in the US. So all the formulas are organic. The protein in all HiPP formulas is the intact skim milk with additional whey, which is going to tweak that ratio closer to 60-40 whey to casein, which is like breast milk. I feel bad because I just lied. The one exception to this is HiPP stage 1 hungry, which I will cover just next, so hold on there. So all of them except HiPP 1 hungry has that protein. All HiPP formulas are 100% lactose. So you have 100% lactose. That's of course organic, so that's easy. Most people are looking for that in a European formula. However, if your baby has a lactose sensitivity and you're looking for something that's a little lactose reduced, HiPP is not a good choice for you because they don't offer that in a formula. The fat blend is the same in all their formulas, I believe. I say I believe because for all the ingredients, sometimes on ingredients list, they just say vegetable oils. And then sometimes they give the full listing. So I'm assuming it's all the same because it's kind of a pain for a manufacturer to change the fat blend. So I'm assuming it's all the same. So it's palm oil, rapeseed oil, sunflower oil. So it does contain palm oil, but it does not contain soy oil. So this is a very standard fat blend, particularly for European formulas. So we're still talking about actually, so if that's the same, so what I just said, so I hit the protein, the carbohydrate, and the fat. That's the same for all of HiPP's formula, all country, all stages, with the one exception of protein in hungry, which we'll cover next. So, okay, that's easy. So there's not much difference there. So now if we're just talking about HiPP 1, they all contain galacto-oligosaccharides, which is a prebiotic. So it's a fiber that provides food for the healthy bacteria that you want to grow in your baby's intestines. Every single HiPP formula has galacto-oligosaccharides. So it's consistent across stages and across countries, which is great. So here is the big difference between the countries. From what I can tell, there's 2 major differences. One, the Dutch HiPP in both stage 1 and stage 2 also contains a probiotic, which is Lactobacillus Fermentum hereditum, if you really want to know. So, I mean, that's a lovely, super safe strain appropriate for infants. However, just the point I want to make is that Dutch contains a probiotic, the other 2 do not. So if you have your baby on the German HiPP and then, your supplier's out, so they send you Dutch and you just use it and your baby has explosive blowouts and is suffering from gas pain all of a sudden, there's a really good reason. Oh my gosh, I think someone's waking up. No, I'm just hearing things. So that is a big change. And from what I can tell from ingredients that I'm able to find that are in English, that's the biggest major difference. The other major difference between the countries for both stage 1 and stage 2 is that it seems, the Dutch version is soy free. Both the UK and the German version of stage 1 and stage 2 contain soy lecithin. So not a huge source of soy, not like soy oil. However, if your baby has a pretty intense soy sensitivity, that's usually enough to set babies off if they have a severe sensitivity. And so again, if you're on the Dutch version, everything's going fine, and then you end up with the UK version, you could end up with a reaction. So it's unfortunate that you have to know these subtle differences, but there you go. Okay, moving on, comparing stage 1 to stage 2 of the HiPP formulas, the other differences are the amino acids that are added. So in the US, we like to add things like carnitine, taurine, and nucleotides to formula. In the UK, They don't care about nucleotides at all. You can't find them in any formulas. But they like to add single amino acids to their formulas. These are not required, but it's pretty commonplace to do so. So this is manufacturers' attempt at trying to make formula look a little bit more like breast milk. It doesn't make or break my decision. It's kind of like how I feel about nucleotides. But if this is of interest to you, that's why I make these videos. So stage 1, all the HiPP stage 1s contain 3 different amino acids that are, in addition to the protein sources, added in. This is tyrosine, phenylalanine, and tryptophan. Stage 2, they only add tryptophan, so they back off a little bit. And this kind of goes with the idea of staging, that, if stage 2 is just for a baby who's getting solid foods, is over 6 months, they should be getting plenty of protein from the formula, but also their solid foods. Like, they shouldn't need an amino acid supplement, so they kind of back off on that. So that's the difference in the sort of extras added. And then in general, for moving on to DHA, all of HiPP's stage 1 formulas add a source of DHA, both from, they say, vegetable and fish oils. So the German version does contain probiotics, someone is telling me. Oh my gosh, okay. I'm going to get there in a second. So the German version of HiPP stage 1 and stage 2 does not contain probiotics. However, the German pre-formula, which I'll cover separately right after I just get done with the standard stage 1 and stage 2, does contain a probiotic. That's kind of like their special one. That's from the ingredients that I have found, again, in English, because I don't speak German. So bear with me there. So for people who are a little confused, I'm just talking about stage 1 and stage 2 from the 3 countries, so kind of their standard formulas. All right, so but thank you so much for bringing that up. So back to the DHA. Stage 1 contains DHA from vegetable and fish oils, but the vegetable oils is how they label alpina oil. I keep thinking that I'm hearing the babies waking up. So that is a hexane extracted source of some of the DHA. And then the fish oil, I believe, is not hexane extracted, but I can't find information about that for sure. So basically, for those of you who are concerned about hexane extracted sources of fatty acids, the HiPP stage 1 formulas do contain these. And then in stage 2, they don't bother adding it because, again, that's for an older baby. They should be getting solid foods. They can eat just fish, introduce salmon into their diet. It's wonderful for older babies. So they don't bother adding long chain PUFAs, DHA and RA, into stage 2 formulas. And then for all their stage 1 and stage 2 formulas, just making sure I'm quoting correctly, the iron moves from 0.5 milligrams per 100 mils to 1 milligram per 100 mils. So it starts off low and it doubles. Okay, I'm getting another comment from Alice, but the Organic Start website says stage 1 does contain probiotics, unless they're wrong. Okay, so someone's calling me out on not knowing about the probiotics. Thank you so much. So she's saying this from the Organic Start website, probiotics in the German version. I got this information from, where did I get it from? I think Baby Kind Market's website. So I'll double check and post in the comments. I'll figure it out which one is actually for sure correct. Thanks, no problem. Yeah. So this is a huge problem with European formulas, and I said this in the last one about European formulas too. It's really hard to find accurate information, and that should be my disclaimer. And when I'm really confident talking about U.S. formulas, and they have sites for medical professionals, and it's a little bit easier. It's hard to find really accurate information for European formulas because a lot of the the official sites aren't in English, or they're regulated just much more strictly. So getting access to actual manufacturing information is much more difficult. So I will find out for sure about the probiotics in the German stage 1 and stage 2, but from the information I have, I am operating under the assumption that stage 1 and stage 2 German HiPP does not contain a probiotic. However, the HiPP pre does contain a probiotic. So after this, I'll check and I'll update in the comments when this video is reposted. Okay, so yes, I can't believe somebody is awake. Hold on one second. I'm going to ask my husband if he can go check on him. Thank you, babe. Man, it is just one of those days. All right, so the then HiPP has two kind of specialty formulas. That's all their stage 1 and stage 2 that are just particular per country. I'm going to talk with my voice down so PD can't hear me. HiPP UK has a HiPP stage 1 hungry formula. It's only from the UK, and basically the difference is it's really similar to their standard stage 1, except the really big difference is that the protein source is just from skim milk, no additional whey added. So it has a lot of casein in it. It'll be roughly 80% casein, 20% whey. Roughly at your house. Oh my God. Thank you, Laura. Yes. So the hungry has a lot more casein. I think they do this because casein takes longer to empty the stomach than whey. So it'll sit there for longer, and I think the theory is it'll allow a baby to feel more full. So it's not like this formula has any more calories. They're just hoping it will improve the baby's sensation of satiety. Which in theory is fine with me, but my big problem is, say, like, you know, your baby's on the standard formula till 3 months, you like feel like they're hungrier, so you switch to this one. It's a really big shift in protein, especially if this is all your baby's eating. So it's just something to be aware of. And I usually like a little bit of I like the whey ratio to be a little bit more like breast milk for multiple reasons, but mostly for this. I think a lot of parents make this switch kind of willy-nilly, thinking like, oh, maybe this will help them sleep through the night, and then the baby ends up with a rash. You know, it's a similar thing where if parents don't have full information, it's hard for them to make a really good informed decision. So that's HiPP UK hungry. It has a totally different whey to casein ratio. The fat bund's the same. It's still 100% lactose, still galacto-oligosaccharides. It doesn't have phenylalanine in it or tyrosine. They use cysteine and tryptophan. So these are amino acids. So there's a slightly different amino acid supplement, which again is like, meh, doesn't really matter to me that much. It does contain DHA because it's technically a stage 1, and it's kind of an in-between iron concentration. So the standard stage 1 is 0.5, stage 1 hungry is 0.7, and then stage 2 bumps all the way up to 1.0. So that is the other difference is that it is soy free, again, according to the ingredients that I can find. So the protein is the really big difference there. The other kind of specialty HiPP formula is a German formula that I've alluded to a couple times now with the probiotic, and that's HiPP Pre. Now the protein source is the same in that, and I actually did try to look this up and actually translate from German. The protein source is skimmed milk, whey product is what I could get, and then whey protein. So I'm not 100% sure what that means. I'm going to go ahead and assume it's still just additional whey added, that they use 2 different formulations of whey as my guess. So I think the protein source should be the same. Either way, it clearly has a lot of whey added, which I like. 100% lactose, same fat blend, and then this one is the same prebiotic that they all have, galacto-oligosaccharides, but also the probiotic, the same probiotic that the Dutch versions use. It only has 2 as opposed to 3 amino acids additionally added. It does not have any tyrosine, and it has the same sources of DHA, and it's not labeled as a stage, but it has the stage 1 concentration of iron, the 0.5, so the very low. So that's the big difference. So another big difference is it's soy free. So at least to me, the big difference between pre and the stage 1 jumping out was it does have a probiotic, which again, now we're kind of unsure if German stage 1 does or doesn't, and it's soy free, whereas the stage 1 and stage 2 German do have soy lecithin. So these are really minor differences, but if you've got a sensitive baby, they could be major differences. So those are your options with HiPP. The take home is do your research. If you can get a copy of like a picture of, it would be awesome to have a picture of the actual formula you're receiving, even if the ingredients are in German, because then you can, get them translated so and like be able to tell if there's a probiotic in it, etc. And then of course the same advice of, because the iron is so much lower, it's really important to follow the stage. So like, I don't want to see an 8-month-old baby on stage 1 because that's just not enough iron for them. Okay, so that's HiPP. And that was the most complicated. The others should go a little bit quickly. So I'm going to jump to Holle next because that's the next biggest brand. Have a little sip here. Oh, it's just lovely. Holle has only 3. Baby Kind Market has a picture of the ingredients on their site. Thanks, Betsy. Betsy, it's so good to see you. I have checked all these ingredients multiple times. I spent a lot of time on Google Translator with German. So I am as confident as I can be that the information I'm giving you is correct. But my standard disclaimer is, you know, these are European formulas, and I practice in America, and I'm just much more comfortable with American formula ingredients. So if I'm given any inaccurate information, I will be sure to update it in the comments. Facebook page that has mamas that are a wealth of information. Oh yeah, that's a really good point, Laura. I wasn't going to bring that up, but I'm glad you brought it up. So she's saying that HiPP and Holle they have Facebook pages but a lot of them are U.S. moms, and actually that is a good point. A lot of these European formulas have Facebook communities or just communities in general, and I found the parents in there to just be so supportive and helpful. I've asked mothers to send me pictures of cartons before, and they are so happy to. So you're right, that's another really great source of both information and just support in general, especially if you need a lead on a new supplier or something like that. Thanks, Laura. That's a really, really good point. Okay, so Lebenswert. Oh, I'm sorry, we'll do Holle then Lebenswert. So let's start with Holle. Holle only has 3 formulas, thank God. To be honest, I'm not exactly, oh yeah, they're all, Holle is German, so everything is made in Germany. So you have Holle Pre, and then Holle Stage 1 and Stage 2. So we will just start with I'll start with Stage 1 and 2, and then move to the Pre. So, I'll say for all of Holle's formulas, a big benefit that you get with Holle is they do the Demeter certification. So, I hope I'm saying that correctly, Demeter. Demeter certification is I talked a lot about this in my last happy hour, so I won't really go into it, but it's basically a biodynamic farming practice certification. The punchline for me from a nutrition standpoint, in addition to like sustainability is amazing and wonderful, but from the actual nutrition that your baby is going to be taking in, the cows that are producing the milk that's used are very healthy and, for lack of a better word, happy cows. They are not going to, or they're much less likely to be inflamed, have any subclinical infection, kinds of things that are probably pretty pervasive in standard farming practices. Because they are grass-fed, they're pastured, and they are very naturally cared for. So what that means is, if you think about when mothers making milk, it's very similar to cows making milk, the healthier you are, the less likely things like markers of inflammation or toxins are going to get into the milk. So, in my opinion, the healthier the cow, the better. So you get that in all of Holle's formulas. All of them are Demeter certified, and they're also carbon neutral. Okay. Which again is a wonderful thing, but carbon neutral versus not doesn't necessarily affect the nutrient quality, but the Demeter certification, I think, does have an effect. So that's for all of Holle's formulas. So let's hit Stage 1. So the protein source is skim milk powder, and then they have additional whey added. So that's actually for both Stage 1 and Stage 2. So basically, it's the same. So it's the same protein source as the HiPP. So there's not really a big differentiator there. The big differentiator for Holle versus HiPP is in the carbohydrate. So Holle Stage 1 you don't see any lactose on the ingredients at all. You only see maltodextrin. Now there's skim milk as a source of the protein, which provides a lot of lactose with it. So the Holle Stage 1 is going to be a blend. The carbohydrate is going to come from a blend of both lactose and maltodextrin. I don't know exactly what percentage. That's way more detail than I could find anywhere. However, this is going to be a lactose-reduced formula. So that's a really big difference between HiPP and Holle. But it's really nice to have the option if you have a baby who has a little bit of a lactose sensitivity and you want a European formula. Holle is definitely a better way for you to go. And then the fat blend is the exact same as the fat blend in HiPP. So it's palm, rapeseed, and sunflower oil. So that's for both stage 1 and stage 2. Another big differentiator between Holle and HiPP are the extras. So HiPP adds galactooligosaccharides, some extra amino acids, DHA, and Holle does none of it. They're much more basic or simplified. So they really like to market to a simplified formula. So they don't add any prebiotic, any probiotic, no extra amino acids added, no DHA in any of their formulas, including the stage 1. And the iron is really similar to HiPP. So stage 1 starts out at 0.6 and stage 2 goes up to 0.9. So someone's saying there's Holle stages 3 and 4 too. Yes, there are. Thank you for pointing that out. So that goes for HiPP. HiPP goes up to stage 3 and 4. Those are they're marketed, they're supposed to be for toddlers, so for 12 months and on. So I'm just going to, for the sake of my own sanity, cover the stage 1 and stage 2, the infant, the 0 to 12 month ages here, because that's what you would be kind of competing with the U.S. market. So parents who are looking for a replacement for U.S. formulas. Okay, so that's Holle stage 1. Stage 2, I've kind of covered mostly. The big difference is, we said the iron goes up. The other big difference is that they also add starch to the carbohydrate blend. Why they do this, I think, is kind of like a hungry formula. If it's starch, is going to thicken the formula a little bit, and I believe the reason they would do this is if it's thickened, it'll hopefully remain in the stomach a little bit longer. Like drinking a milkshake versus drinking a glass of milk, kind of a sensation that may allow the baby to feel a better sensation of satiety. That's why I think they do it. I can't think of another reason why they would add starch just to stage 2. But that's the other big difference. Stage 2, the carbohydrate is going to be from lactose and maltodextrin and a little bit of starch, and of course the iron increases, but still no DHA, same protein blend, same fat blend as stage 1. So I'm going to jump backwards and now go over let's see that's saying. There's also Holle Pre with no maltodextrin. Yes, thank you. I'm going to jump a little bit backwards and do the Holle Pre right now, which is actually quite different. And I love this formula, Holle Pre. So the protein base is the same as Holle stage 1 and 2. It's skim milk with additional whey. So that's very standard. So it's intact. The same as all the other formulas we talked about so far. It is 100% lactose. So as the comment said, so is no maltodextrin and no starch. So again, usually parents who are trying to find European formula are looking for 100% lactose. So if you want like a Demeter farm that's 100% lactose, they have it for you, which is fabulous. The other thing I love about this formula is the fat blend. It is the only European formula that uses some actual dairy cream. So palm oil, rapeseed oil, sunflower oil, standard, but then it also uses actual cream from the cows, which is amazing because we just talked about how wonderful Demeter is, and the biggest place that you see nutrient differences between grass-fed, well-cared-for cows and cows that are not well-cared for is in the quality of their fat. So, if we have these super healthy cows, it seems such a shame to just be using the skim milk. Let's have some of that really healthy fat for our babies. So the Holle Pre uses a portion of the fat in the formula actually comes from the cream that the cows produce, which again, I think is wonderful in the context of a very healthy cow. And then the rest is very similar. No prebiotic, no probiotic, no DHA, and very low iron, the lowest iron of 0.5. So that's kind of a bummer to me that the iron is so low, because if you're going to stay, for example, then if you want to stay on Holle Pre past the 5-6 month range, it'd be really, really important to me that you're very strategic about just being sure that your baby is getting a really quality source of iron consistently in their diet, in their solid foods, because that's a really low iron concentration to be having. Most stage 2s jump to 1.0, so to remain at 0.5 the baby just needs to be getting iron from an additional source as well. So that's Holle's 3 major. So a little bit of difference gives you some options and differences between HiPP, but at least you don't have to deal with the the worries about like, what country am I getting this from? And actually Holle has a great website that is in English, and I spend a lot of time there. So I feel pretty good about my information on Holle's formulas. Okay. The last 2 are Lebenswert, and Lebenswert is actually owned by Holle. So it is produced in Germany, or is a German company anyway. And Holle is basically, seems to me to like, it's your kind of bare bones formula. So if you're looking for something very simple, even more simple than Holle, then Lebenswert might be what you're looking for. And they only have a stage 1 and a stage 2. And so I'll just kind of do them side by side. Both of them have the same protein source, which is the same as everybody else has, skim milk, but with additional whey added. Stage 1 is 100% lactose. Stage 2 has maltodextrin. Honestly, this I can't figure out. I just can't figure out, because if anybody is going to be having a lactose sensitivity issue, it's much more likely to be a newborn baby than an older baby. Not only that, but if your baby's doing great on Lebenswert stage 1, then they clearly don't have a lactose issue, because that's 100% lactose. So to add maltodextrin to stage 2, I'm not really sure. My best guess is they're using a very, maltodextrin can come in a lot of different sweetness strengths, and it's basically the size of the carbohydrate. My guess is they're using a maltodextrin in this case as a thickener. So similar to how Holle stage 2 adds starch. I don't know that for a fact. That's the only logical explanation I can come up with. But that's the biggest difference. Stage 1 is 100% lactose. Stage 2 does include some maltodextrin. Both are the same vegetable blend you see everywhere else: palm oil, rapeseed, and sunflower. And then they're like pretty stripped down. So no prebiotic, no probiotic, no amino acids added, no DHA in either. And then stage 1 has 0.7 milligrams of iron, so a little higher than the Holle and HiPP stage 1. And then stage 2 bumps up to 0.9. Lebenswert formulas are soy-free, so that's another huge benefit. Like I said, for families that are dealing with a lot of sensitivities, so are looking for like a bare bones formula that doesn't have a lot of potential irritants, Lebenswert is potentially a good one to consider. Okay, what else do I need to tell you? Okay, Laura, what are you saying? Great. All the way to a year with okay. So no low iron issues at all. Perfect. So yeah, I mean, it's so sorry for those of you who are seeing me comment. Laura's baby did wonderful on the low iron formula all the way up to a year. And yeah, that in theory, that is totally possible. Exclusively breastfed babies clearly get breast milk has a really, really low iron, way lower than these European formulas. And clearly breastfed babies do just fine, but I say the same thing to breastfed babies, like, it's just important that you are, aware of the choices you make with solid foods. But that's really, really good to know. I've been told Lebenswert does that cut down in a preference. Oh, for a sweet taste. Yeah, I mean, maltodextrin is sweeter to add to stage 2. But, it is what it is. Some parents are really, really big on avoiding maltodextrin, in which case maybe you want to stay on stage 1 and just, be careful of getting iron up to a little bit higher with solid foods. So I think that's everything. The other thing I did want to close with is, I talked about this in the regulatory happy hour, that the European Commission just released a new regulation that's going to require all stage 1 formulas to contain a source of DHA. So Holle and Lebenswert are going to have to add a DHA to their formula by 2020, which is right around the corner now. So, and 2020 at the latest. So I anticipate they'll adhere sooner than the deadline. So that's going to be a big change, and I'm really excited to see how they choose to source their DHA. But it will just be interesting to see. And of course, once I hear about any ingredient changes, I will update you. I really hope this was helpful. I'm really sorry about the delay. If you have stuck with me this far, then you are a trooper, and I can confess to you that, like, wow, today was a mommy day to be had. I'm like, true story, I got poop in my hair. Like, somehow that has not happened to me before, and it was just the lowest of the low. Like, how has this happened? Well, if you have a 1-year-old, it is bound to happen sooner or later. And somehow I made it through my whole first baby without it happening, and it happened today, and it was rough. So, but they're all in bed, back to bed. And thank you for sticking it out. And thank you for all the comments and all the support. Oh, Jessica, I'm so glad it was helpful. And thank you guys for being so on top of things. I will close with saying if anyone is using or know of a girlfriend who is using HiPP stage 1 or 2 from Germany, if you could send me a Facebook message with a picture of the ingredients, it'll be in German. I would love to see it, because then we can really solve this problem of whether or not it has a probiotic, which I promise I will find out and update in the comments. Let's close this and I'll go to bed, ladies. You guys have a wonderful weekend. I'm so glad that you stuck with me through this whole time. If I can be of help to you with feeding your little one, you know where to find me. I do free 15-minute consultations, which are just a joy to me, and I would be happy to provide any expertise that may be helpful. I hope you guys have had a wonderful new year. We're really rolling into 2018. I hope nobody gets spooked when they're here tomorrow. If you do, I feel ya. The next day will be better. Okay, you guys have an awesome night, and I'll see you next week. Bye.